Hi, and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's The Expanse character analysis for Joseph Miller. This video is part of a series of videos where I explore the character journey of a character from the Expanse TV show. In this video, I will analyze the character of Detective Joe Miller. In these videos, I explore his portrayal on the Expanse TV show only, and I don't draw from any material from the Expanse novels. So I have to start with a spoiler warning for the Expanse TV show up to the end of Season 4. If you haven't seen up to this point, you may not want to watch this video, otherwise some things will be spoiled for you. So, Joseph Miller was born and raised on Ceres Station, where he became a hardened detective working for the Earth Corporation's Star Helix. He was once considered a great detective, but now is looked down upon as a kind of drunk and a has-been. Many Belters who are sympathetic to the OPA on Ceres Station considered Miller a traitor, as he works for the Earth Corporation Star Helix. Miller currently has an Earther for a partner named Havelock, whom he tries to show the ropes to and how things work on Ceres, but he's a bit naive. Miller himself is a bit of a crooked cop, as he takes bribes from gangsters. However, it's all in the interest in making sure Ceres runs smoothly, that there's enough air, water, and other precious resources for everyone, and as long as these gangsters know not to mess with these things, Miller's fine with it. However, if anyone does mess with the vital functions of the station, Miller comes down on them like a ton of bricks. He did so to a kid named Diago, who was siphoning water to sell in the black market, and in process was endangering the water supply. Miller made it clear to him that he didn't care if he did anything else illegal, but to stay away from the water. Things changed for Miller when his chief, Sadig, gives him an off-the-book assignments to track the daughter of a mega-rich Earther named Jules Pierre Mal, who is the CEO of Mal Krokowski Mercantile. His daughter, Julie Mal, disappeared in the belt as she was last seen on Ceres Station, so Shadig hires Miller to find her and send her back to her father on Earth. Miller refers to this as a kidnap job, but it pays well, so he takes the job anyway. He investigates Julie's apartment and learns that she ran away to the Belt to help the Belters whose plight she identified with. Her father didn't like what she was doing and demanded she return, but she hated everything he stood for and instead wanted to do some good for humanity. Even after her father threatened to take away her racing ship, the Razorback, which was her most prized possession, he threatened to take it away from her. She simply told him to do what he had to do and still refused to return home. Miller gained a lot of respect for Julie, and the more he learned about her, the more he was intrigued by her, such as when he learned that she was quite the fighter who could defend herself, as he saw footage of her violently rebuffing unwanted advances. Miller's investigation took him to a lot of places, and he started to get the impression that she was involved with the OPA. He was then approached by a man named Anderson Dawes, who ran the OPA faction on Ceres. Dawes tried to convince Miller to drop the Julie Mal case and told him that he was just a traitor to the Belt who doesn't really care about helping Belters. But Miller sees through Dawes as a megalomaniac who is only concerned with his own power. Meanwhile, the Canterbury's destruction and Holden's signal blaming Mars for the attack causes riots on Ceres. Miller has to work with the police to calm the riots, which is a difficult task. Miller manages to do a good enough job, but his partner Havelock gets attacked and a spike gets driven through his chest. Havelock miraculously survives the encounter, but Miller isn't happy that he hooked up with a Belter prostitute and they part on bad terms. Dawes makes an offer to Miller, offering to give him the man who tried to kill Havelock. All Miller needs to do is drop his investigation into Julie Mal. Miller still refuses to do so and instead enlists the help of fellow detective Octavia Muss. Muss just so happens to be Miller's ex, but she does still respect him and helps him in his investigation, which Miller is now convinced that he's on to something big that involves the destruction of the Canterbury and weapons research station on Phoebe. Miller discovers evidence of this from tracking down an information broker that Julie used. This catches the attention of Anderson Dawes, who sends his goons to abduct Miller, and he tortures him as he interrogates him on the whereabouts of this evidence. During the interrogation, Dawes realizes that Miller has fallen in love with Julie Mao, which is why he won't drop the case, but he tells Miller that if Julie knew him, she would hate him because he only cares about himself and not those suffering in the belt. The evidence, however, was in fact inside Miller's hat the whole time, but he managed to keep this information from Dawes, who eventually decides to have his goons toss Miller out of an airlock. However, Octavia Musk shows up just in time to save Miller, and as they dispense with the goons. Miller examines the evidence to see it has a recording of a secret experiment on Phoebe's of a Mars science station, a research station of a bioweapon. Julie apparently thought it was being developed to be used against the belt, so took the Scopuli out to investigate, and the Scopuli was the ship used as bait to draw in and destroy the Canterbury. So this suggests a much bigger conspiracy involving the destruction of the Canterbury, so Miller feels proud of himself for this big find, so he takes it to his boss Shadig, who responds by destroying the evidence and firing Miller. That's when he realizes that she was under Dawes' payroll. Having lost his job and all hope, Miller resorts to drinking, and not even Musk can pull him out of his depression. When Miller goes to confront Dawes, Dawes treats him kindly and tries to recruit him into the OPA as he figures Miller has nowhere else to turn, and Dawes recognizes his worth, but Miller refuses. Just when Miller is about to lose all hope, he gets a call from his old friend Simatemba, who's a police officer on Eros Station. Before he was fired, Miller had inquired with him if he had spotted Julie Mao or the ship she was on, and Simatemba reports that her shuttle is in fact on Eros. This gives Miller purpose again, and he uses his life savings to book a passage to Eros to try to find Julie. Octavia Musk offers to go with him, but he insists he must go alone, and they part ways. Miller arrives on Eros, who is greeted warmly by his old friend Simatemba, and they reminisce about old times, how they grew up together as thugs, and they both eventually became cops on Ceres until Simatemba was fired and had to relocate to Eros. When Simatemba learns Miller is in love with Julie Mao and is tracking her for that reason, he urges Miller to drop the case, but he refuses. And eventually Simatemba finds video evidence that shows that Julie Mao was last seen headed to a hotel. So Miller goes to this hotel to investigate, and he finds himself in a firefight between the Rosnate crew and some UN thugs. Miller helps the Rosnate crew defeat the thugs and then learns that they were looking for Julie as well. So they go into the room together, where they find Julie dead and covered in protomolecule. Miller is devastated, but with Simatemba's help, he helps the Rosnate crew escape the law and works with them to uncover this conspiracy. However, Eros Station suddenly gets locked down. There's a bunch of goons Miller recognizes as gangsters from Ceres, posing as security officers, rounding everyone up into safe rooms. Miller deduces that they should not go with these thugs, so Miller and Holden go to investigate what's really going on, while Simatemba and the rest of the Rosnate crew try to make their way back to the Rosnate to plan their escape. Miller and Holden trap a thug and force him to open a safe room and are blasted with radiation as they learn the civilian population is being rounded up to be blasted with radiation in order to be infected with the protomolecule for some sick experiment. As they are both dying from radiation poisoning, they manage to make it past the goons and back to the Rosnate, where they recover in sickbay. Miller learns that Amos had shot Simatemba in the face when he tried to force the Rosnate to leave without them, which put him and Amos on bad terms, but Miller eventually decided to let this go. They also uncovered the conspiracy that an Earth corporation known as Protogen which is a subsidiary of Malgorkowski Mercantile, had built stealth ships and were using it to run experiments on the protomolecule, killing the entire population of Eros. They had destroyed the Canterbury as a ploy to distract Earth, Mars, and the Belt as they ran their experiments. They also discovered the station that they were running these experiments. So the Rosinante crew team up with Fred Johnson's faction of the OPA to raid the station and stop these experiments. Miller leads one of the raiding parties on the station, which wasn't difficult as those on the station had non-lethal weapons in order to control the scientists who they all turned into sociopaths. Miller manages to capture the man in charge, a scientist named Dresden. He, Fred Johnson, and Holden interrogate him, and Dresden tries to convince them to let him continue his experiments as it could be the solution to save all of humanity. And it looks like he's starting to convince Fred Johnson, so Miller shoots him in the head. This alienates Miller from Holden, who kicks him off of the Rosinante for murdering a man in cold blood, but Miller would later say that he killed Dresden because he was making sense, and he didn't want more masses of people to die because of him. Miller moves in with Iago, who is now part of the OPA on Tycho Station, and then comes to realize that something on Eros is still alive, that the strange alien protomolecule is controlling the asteroid and is still a threat, so he comes up with a plan to use the colony ship, the Nauvoo, to push Eros into the sun. Fred Johnson is on board with this plan, but they need to convince Holden to use the Rosinante for protection, as Holden wants nothing to do with Miller, but he agrees and they enact their plan, which involves Miller setting charges on Eros to make the plan work. However, while on Eros, one of the bombs is damaged and has to be detonated manually, so Miller decides to stay behind to sacrifice himself so the plan will work. However, when it comes time for the Nauvoo to hit Eros, the asteroid inexplicably dodges the ship and then turns into a projectile controlled by the protomolecule, going at unbelievable speeds with a direct collision course with Earth. Miller stays on Eros to investigate while the Rosinante tries to keep up with the asteroid in order to stop it. While on the protomolecule-controlled Eros, Miller keeps hearing Julie Mao's voice and eventually deduces that a part of Julie is still alive and is controlling Eros. He asks Holden to stop chasing Eros as the more he does, the harder it is for Miller to get to Julie, as he tells Holden he can convince Julie to stop. Eventually, Holden agrees, and Miller makes his way to Julie, who is now completely integrated with the protomolecule and is confused as she just wants to return home to Earth. Miller tries to tell her that she can't go home, that it will kill everyone, and he tells her to stop. But she angrily pronounces that she can't stop the work, so Miller then says they don't need to stop, that they could go somewhere else, like Venus. Julie and Miller bond, and Julie tells him that he's with her now. Then Eros collides with Venus, saving Earth, and the Rosinante crew salutes Miller and his sacrifice. However, that's not exactly where Miller's story ends, as although Joe Miller died when Eros collided with Venus, the protomolecule used Miller's essence to reconstruct him into an investigator who can investigate what happened to the protomolecule creators. It uses a piece of protomolecule stuck on the Rosinante to communicate directly with James Holden to elicit his aid in this investigation. At first, the reconstruction of Miller is incoherent, so when Holden keeps seeing him, Holden thinks he's gone mad or is infected with the protomolecule, but nothing seems to be wrong with him. While investigating the alien ring that the protomolecule remnant of Eros had constructed and is now on the outer edges of the solar system, the Rosinante is framed for an act of terrorism it did not commit, so Holden asks the projection of Miller what to do. And Miller keeps telling Holden to watch his doors and corners, that if he enters a room too fast, the room will eat you. Holden then interprets this to mean that he can enter the ring as long as they aren't going too fast, so Holden enters the ring at a safe speed in order to escape the UN and Martian fleets that were trying to destroy him. Once in the alien ring space, Miller is a lot more clear and coherent. There's an alien station in the middle of the ring space, and Miller tells Holden he needs to go there. Holden's worried about other things, such as the fact all three fleets went into the ring space after him to chase him, and they figured out that they can't hit the edge without being destroyed, so it's only a matter of time before the Martians catch them. So Holden decides they're going to let the Martians catch them, as it will clear his name, but they will confiscate the Rocinante, which they consider their property. However, before Holden can slow down, Miller convinces him to go to the station, so he leaves the Rocinante in a suit, leaving Amos and Alex behind. Miller guides him to the station, trying to explain that the slow zone is a defense system and that he has limited control of the security system, but just enough to let Holden enter the station without being killed, but not enough to turn it off entirely. Miller leads Holden into a large room and tells him to put his hand in a pillar in order to connect a circuit. Holden fears he might be being manipulated by the protomolecule and challenges Miller to prove he is Miller, and asks him about Julie and how he died on Eros, but Miller angrily says he doesn't want to talk about Julie and disappears. He later reappears and tells the story of how when he and Julie were on Eros, about to collide with Venus, where she told him the story of when a child dies, an angel takes their hand and falls with them halfway so they won't be scared. He tells Holden he tried to be the angel, but he was too scared, so Julie took his hand, and he told her as she falls with him, it isn't going to be for halfway. This satisfies Holden that he's talking to Miller, but before he can complete the circuit, Bobby Draper and some Martian Marines catch up with him and order him to stand down. When he refuses to do so, they shoot at him, but the slow zone technology grabs the bullets and prevents it from hitting him, and then a machine comes alive and attacks the Marines. The commander throws a grenade at it, but the station responds by decreasing the speed of the slow zone, which causes all the ships in the slow zone to instantly decelerate, which kills a lot of people. It also grabs the Marine and rips him to shreds. Miller once again urges Holden to finish the circuit, so he does. Holden then experiences a vision that showed how the protomolecule creators once expanded the galaxy with ring gates that allowed them to instantly travel across vast distances, and also how they encountered a disease that was killing them all off, and that they destroyed entire solar systems to try to find a way to rid themselves of this disease, but it didn't work. When Holden wakes up, he finds the Martian Marines had taken him into custody, and they took him aboard the Belter ship Behemoth, where everyone in the ring space had gathered so their wounded could heal. There, Miller tells him the way out is to get every ship to turn off its drive plume so that the defense system will shut down because they no longer perceive them as a threat. Holden knows how important it is to shut them down, as through his vision he knows that it's capable of destroying Earth's entire solar system. But no one believes him when he tries to tell them. They all think he's crazy. But Naomi believes him and eventually teams up with Drummer to try to enact his plan, but the captain of the Behemoth, a man named Ashford, doesn't believe them and tries to stop them. When in the engine room in an attempt to shut down the engines, they learn that Ashford is planning to destroy the ring with a laser, which Holden knows would only result in Earth's entire solar system being destroyed, wiping out all of humanity. So they battle with Ashford's men, and they try to reason with him, and although they don't convince him, someone else is convinced, and they shut down the drive. This results in the defense system being shut down, releasing all ships trapped there, and all the ring gates open up, allowing humanity access to over 1,300 habitable worlds. Miller tells Holden that he's going to need a ride to one of these worlds to investigate what killed the protomolecule creators. Over a year has passed and Holden has yet to go through the ring gates, and Miller keeps bothering him for a ride. Eventually, Avasarala sends the Rocinante to a world called Illis, settled by Belters, and is trying to be commandeered by an Earth corporation called RCE. But Miller doesn't care about any of that. He just wants to investigate all the strange alien structures left behind. He describes it as a crime scene. He talks Holden into going into one of the structures to allow Miller to turn on all the technology to find out what's going on. He does so, but this causes chaos in the form of alien structures destroying the ground, massive explosions that cause a tsunami that wipes out the settlement, and a defense system that shuts down all the ships in orbit, leading them to eventually fall out of the sky. So Holden no longer trusts Miller and refuses to talk to him. Miller finally reappears to Holden when he's with the settlers hiding in an alien structure, and he appears to Holden screaming. Miller tells Holden he's trying to be controlled by the protomolecule's version of him called the Investigator, but he managed to get his independence. He continues to have an internal struggle with the Investigator for control, but he tells Holden to travel to a blind spot that Miller can't see, as he's sure it's the key to shutting down all protomolecule technology on the planet. So Holden travels through a hole with the slow zone haze that guides him to a faraway structure, and Miller leads him to a room where the blind spot is and asks Holden if he sees anything, and he does, as there's an obvious black hole with a bright halo in the room that Holden describes to Miller as an eye of an angry god. So Miller tells Holden his plan is to put himself into something physical and then connect himself to all of the alien technology on the planet and then walk through the angry god thing. Holden realizes Miller's come here to die, but Miller responds by saying, if you can call this a life. And Miller then tells Holden about the piece of protomolecule on his ship that's connecting them to him and how to remove it. However, then a scientist named Elvie comes in and tells Holden that the RCE security chief, a man named Murtry, has come to kill him and that he already shot and possibly killed Amos. So Holden goes to deal with Murtry and tells Elvie to stay behind. Then Miller returns inside a robot and asks to see Holden, but Elvie tells him that he's gone and she's shocked to see him. But he asks Elvie for her guidance to guide him into the anomaly, so she does. The protomolecule tech tries to stop him and nearly destroys him, so Elvie has to drag him into the anomaly, and they both fall inside. And it works. All the protomolecule technology on the planet dies, and the ships in orbit and those on the surface are all saved, but Miller dies. On the Rocinante, Holden takes the remains of the protomolecule on his ship and has another memorial for Miller where he thanks him for all his help, then shoots the protomolecule into the sun. So, Miller, as a detective on Ceres Station, was seen as a scumbag, a dirty cop, and a drunk. But he really was a good person the whole time and needed something to turn him around and prove to himself that he was. It ended up being his love for Julie, which drove him out on a mission where he met with the Rocinante crew. Miller contrasted with Holden, whom he saw as a naive idealist, but eventually they both learned to appreciate one another. Miller ultimately sacrificed himself in order to save humanity, and in the process died with the woman he loved. He then was reconstructed by the alien substance, but an essence of him remained, which he used to guide Holden to open the ring gates and to save everyone's lives who were trapped there. And then he once again sacrifices himself in order to save humanity and all the people trapped on Ilus. Holden often disagreed with Miller and saw him as a cynic or a killer, but ultimately recognized him as a hero who saved and guided him and gave his life for humanity twice. So that's it for my character analysis for Joe Miller, and this concludes my series of the Expanse character analysis videos. Although I may return in some form to cover later seasons, this is the end of this iteration of this series. However, you can check out my channel as I cover Season 5 of The Expanse, now airing, with a review video, a live discussion video, and a book to show comparison video. Also check out my channel for many more reviews on other shows like Discovery, Star Trek, Breaking Bad, The Outer Limits, and more. So be sure to subscribe so you can keep up with all of that. And thanks a lot for watching.